What if you're drowning in debt, unsure how to break free, and feel trapped by financial stress that limits your life choices? What if you're overwhelmed by complex investment options, unsure where to start, and fear losing your hard-earned money to market volatility or bad advice? What if you dream of financial independence, but lack a clear, simple roadmap to achieve it without falling prey to financial charlatans? 10 Life-Changing Rules from the Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins offers a straightforward, proven strategy to eliminate debt, invest wisely in low-cost index funds, and build wealth for true freedom. You must read this book to gain the clarity and confidence to take control of your financial future and live life on your own terms. Here are 10 life-changing rules from J.L. Collins, The Simple Path to Wealth. 1. Wealth equals freedom, not stuff. True wealth is measured by freedom, freedom from debt, stress, and the need to work. Accumulating money isn't about luxury. It's about gaining control over your time and choices. Fu money. 2. Debt is the ultimate enemy. Avoid debt like the plague, especially consumer, car, credit card debt. Debt enslaves you, limits options, and destroys wealth-building potential. Aggressively pay off high-interest debt before heavy investing. 3. Spend less than you earn, the golden rule. This is the non-negotiable foundation. Wealth building is impossible without a gap between income and spending. Frugality isn't deprivation. It's conscious spending aligned with your values. 4. Invest the gap simply and relentlessly. Consistently invest your savings gap. Automate contributions to make saving and investing effortless and habitual. Time in the market beats timing the market. 5. The magic of VTSAX, or equivalent. A total stock market index fund, like Vanguard's VTSAX, is the ideal core investment. It provides instant diversification across thousands of companies, ultra-low fees, and captures the long-term upward trend of the market. Complexity rarely beats simplicity. 6. Fees are the silent killer of wealth. Minimize investment fees at all costs. High fees, expense ratios, advisor fees, transaction costs compound over decades, devastatingly eroding your returns. Stick to low-cost index funds. 7. Ignore the noise and stay the course. Market crashes and volatility are inevitable. Don't panic. Turn off financial media, avoid stock picking, and resist the urge to sell during downturns. History shows the market recovers. Your greatest asset is your temperament. 8. Understand your relationship with risk. Know your risk tolerance and stick to an asset allocation you can hold through thick and thin. For most, a simple portfolio heavily weighted in stocks, VTSX, when young, potentially adding bonds, VBTLX, as you near retirement, suffices. Don't overcomplicate. 9. FU money is your greatest tool. Build enough wealth to have options. This financial cushion gives you the power to walk away from toxic jobs, unfair deals, or situations that compromise your integrity or well-being. It provides peace of mind. 10. Financial independence is achievable for everyone. It's not about high income. It's about high savings rate and smart investing. By living below your means, avoiding debt, and investing consistently in low-cost index funds, financial independence, FI, is a realistic goal for ordinary people, not just the wealthy. Let deep dive to detail. Rule no one. Wealth equals freedom, not stuff. True wealth is measured by freedom, freedom from debt, stress, and the need to work. Accumulating money isn't about luxury. It's about gaining control over your time and choices. FU money. Imagine standing at a crossroads in your life. One path is lined with shiny new cars, sprawling mansions, and the latest gadgets, all glittering with the promise of status and happiness. The other path is quieter, less flashy. A simple trail leading to open horizons, where you're free to choose how you spend your days, unburdened by financial chains. Collins makes it clear which path he's chosen. Wealth equals freedom, not stuff. This is rule number 1, the cornerstone of his philosophy, and it's a radical reframing of what it means to be rich. Through personal stories and vivid examples, Collins shows that true wealth isn't about accumulating possessions. It's about buying the freedom to live life on your own terms. Collins introduces this idea early in the book, in Chapter 1, with a simple yet profound truth. Money can buy many things, but nothing more valuable than your freedom. For him, wealth isn't measured by the size of your house or the brand of your car, but by your ability to say no to things that don't serve you, whether it's a toxic job, societal expectations, or the pressure to keep up with the Joneses. He calls this FU money, a term borrowed from James Clavell's Noble House, where a character seeks enough wealth to be free from others' demands. Colin's own life is a testament to this principle, and his stories bring it to life with clarity and inspiration. Take his experience at 25, when he'd saved a modest $5,000 after 2 years of earning $10,000 annually. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give him leverage. Fresh out of college, stuck in a job he liked but craving adventure, Collins asked his boss for 4 months of unpaid leave to travel Europe. The request was unheard of in those days, and his boss said no. Most people would have accepted defeat, but Collins had FU money. That $5,000 gave him the courage to resign, choosing freedom over security. To his surprise, his boss relented, offering a 6-week leave instead. Collins spent those weeks biking through Ireland and Wales, soaking in the rugged beauty of the countryside. That small nest egg didn't just fund a trip, it bought him the power to negotiate, to shape his life around what mattered most. It was freedom, not stuff, that made those moments possible. This idea echoes through the parable of the monk and the minister in Chapter 2. Two childhood friends meet years later, one a humble monk living on rice and beans, the other a rich minister draped in fine robes, serving the king. The minister pities the monk's simple life, suggesting he could have more if he catered to the king. The monk's reply is a mic drop. If you could learn to live on rice and beans, you wouldn't have to cater to the king. Collins aligns himself with the monk, arguing that true wealth lies in needing less, not owning more. The minister's riches come at the cost of his freedom. He's tethered to the king's whims. The monk, with his minimal needs, is free to live as he chooses. This parable underscores that possessions often own you, demanding maintenance, time, and money, while simplicity unlocks independence. Colin's own life reflects this monk-like approach. He and his wife, Jane, lived frugally, saving 50% of their income and avoiding debt, even for cars. When their daughter was born, they made a bold choice. Jane quit her job to stay home, despite both being temporarily unemployed. They didn't need fancy cars or a bigger house. They had FU money, enough to prioritize family over material upgrades. Collins recalls those years as some of the happiest, building teacup towers and Lincoln log cabins with his daughter while watching The Lion King on repeat. Their net worth grew during this period, not because of lavish spending, but because of disciplined saving and investing in low-cost index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX. By focusing on freedom, they could afford to make choices that aligned with their values, not their bank accounts. Another powerful example comes in Chapter 34, Tales from the South Pacific. Collins recounts meeting Mook, an American who co-owned a hotel in Tahiti. Mook and his college friends bought a pineapple plantation site unseen in the 1960s, only to discover it was a financial dud. Broke, but undeterred, they pivoted to finishing a half-built hotel, despite zero experience in construction or hospitality. Their audacity paid off, and by the time Collins met him, Mook was rich, barefoot, and living in paradise. Mook's wealth wasn't about accumulating stuff. It was about seizing opportunities and living boldly. Similarly, Collins met a couple sailing the South Pacific, rotating business duties with partners in Los Angeles to spend months exploring. Their sailboat wasn't just a possession. It was a vehicle for freedom, enabling a life of adventure and choice. These stories illustrate that wealth as freedom means different things to different people. For Collins, it was the ability to take sabbaticals, switch careers, or retire in 2011 to ride his motorbike, travel to South America, or sip coffee on his porch. For Mook, it was building a life in Tahiti. For the sailing couple, it was roaming the seas. The common thread is that none of them chase stuff for its own sake. Possessions, Collins warns, come with strings attached. A bigger house means higher taxes, maintenance, and furnishing costs. A luxury car demands payments and repairs. These things don't just cost money. They cost time and energy, chaining you to a lifestyle that requires constant earning to sustain. Collins drives this home in Chapter 37, where he critiques good debt, like mortgages. He acknowledges that houses can be indulgences, but cautions against buying more than you need just because you can afford it. The real estate industry, he notes, often pushes people into oversized homes, inflating costs and tying up money that could be invested for freedom. His own approach was to buy modestly, only when it served his family's needs, not as a status symbol. This mindset extends to his advice for his daughter in Chapter 33, Avoid Debt, Save 50% of your income, and invest in VTSAX. By her 30s, she could have enough to live on 4% of her investments, freedom to work, travel, or start a family without financial pressure. The beauty of rule number 1 is its universality. Whether you're a college grad or mid-career, the principle applies. Wealth is about options, not possessions. Colin's own mistakes, like losing $50,000 on a gold mining penny stock, taught him that chasing stuff or quick riches is a trap. Instead, he embraced simplicity, saving aggressively, investing in index funds, and living below his means. This approach didn't just make him wealthy. It gave him the freedom to take risks, like quitting jobs to travel or pursue new ventures, without fear of financial ruin. As Collins puts it, the older I get, the more I hold each day precious. Wealth as freedom means purging what doesn't add value, whether it's debt, clutter, or toxic relationships, and embracing what does. It's about having the resources to explore the world, like Mook in Tahiti, or the time to build memories with loved ones, like Collins with his daughter. It's about waking up each day knowing you can choose your path, not because you own the most stuff, but because you owe nothing to anyone. Rule No. 2. Debt is the ultimate enemy. Avoid debt like the plague, especially consumer, car, credit card debt. Debt enslaves you, limits options, and destroys wealth-building potential. Aggressively pay off high-interest debt before heavy investing. Picture yourself standing on the edge of a financial cliff, the ground crumbling beneath your feet. Each step you take is weighed down by a heavy chain. Debt, that pulls you closer to the abyss. Collins declares debt the ultimate enemy, a vicious force that destroys wealth, shackles your freedom, and fuels a cycle of stress and despair. Rule number 2 isn't just a warning. It's a call to action to sever those chains and reclaim your life. Through personal anecdotes and stark realities, Collins shows how debt ensnares us and offers a clear, if challenging, path to escape its grip. Collins lays out his case in Chapter 1, Debt, the Unacceptable Burden, with a metaphor that hits hard. Carrying debt is as appealing as being covered with leeches and has much the same effect. Debt doesn't just drain your bank account. It siphons your energy, options, and peace of mind. He paints a grim picture of a society drowning in $12 trillion of debt, $8 trillion in mortgages, $1 trillion in student loans, and $3 trillion in credit cards and auto loans, yet treating it as normal. For Collins, this acceptance is madness. If you want financial independence, you must see debt for what it is, a pernicious destroyer that has no place in your life. His own brush with debt as a young man brings this lesson home. Fresh out of college, Collins got his first credit card, a rarity in those days. He racked up $300 in charges, thrilled by the freedom to buy now and pay later. When the bill arrived, he saw the trap, a minimum payment of just $10. It seemed too good to be true, and it was. His sister pointed out the fine print, 18% interest on the unpaid balance. Outraged at being taken for a fool, Collins paid it off immediately, but the experience was a wake-up call. He heard his father's voice. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. That moment shaped his lifelong aversion to debt, reinforcing his belief that borrowing is a marketer's tool to sell you things you don't need at prices you can't afford. Collins argues that debt's damage goes beyond dollars. It enslaves you to your income, forcing you to stay in jobs you hate to service payments. It fuels stress, shame, and helplessness, akin to an addiction. In Chapter 1, he lists its toll: diminished lifestyle, constrained choices, and a fixation on past mistakes and looming disasters. Debt warps your mindset, making you hope for magical solutions while ignoring the crisis. He cites the average car price, $32,000, driven by easy financing and college costs, $100,000 plus, inflated by student loans. Without debt's allure, these prices would collapse, proving that debt isn't just personal, It's systemic, designed to keep you spending. To defeat this enemy, Collins offers a simple, if grueling, plan. List your debts, rank them by interest rate, eliminate non-essential spending, and attack the highest rate debt first while paying minimums on others. Once it's gone, roll that payment to the next debt, creating a snowball effect. He advises against consolidation or debt relief services, which add costs without solving the problem. For low-interest debt, under 3%, he suggests investing instead, but emphasizes the psychological freedom of being debt-free. The discipline required, cutting out $5 coffees, $20 dinners, or $12 cocktails, builds the habits needed for wealth building. Once debt is gone, redirect those payments to investments like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX, turning a burden into a blessing. Collins' own life is a shining example of this rule. He and his wife, Jane, never had a car payment, saved 50% of their income, and avoided debt even during periods of unemployment. When their daughter was born, they made a bold choice. Jane quit her job to stay home, despite no immediate income. Their debt-free lifestyle and savings, FU money, gave them the freedom to prioritize family over material upgrades. During those years, their net worth grew, not because of lavish spending, but because they shunned debt and invested consistently. This discipline allowed Collins to quit jobs, take sabbaticals, and retire in 2011 to live life on his terms, riding his motorbike, traveling to South America, or sipping coffee on his porch. Another example comes in Chapter 33, where Collins advises his daughter, Jessica, on her financial path. Avoid debt, he tells her. Nothing is worth paying interest to own. He urges her to save 50% of her income, invest in VTSAX, and live frugally, using the low-cost skills honed in college. By her 30s, she could achieve financial independence, when 4% of her assets covers her expenses, free from debt's chains. This advice isn't just for the young. It's a blueprint for anyone seeking freedom. Collins' own mistakes, like losing $50,000 on a gold mining penny stock, taught him that chasing quick riches often leads to debt and ruin. His debt-free approach saved him, proving that avoiding debt is as crucial as investing wisely. In Chapter 37, Collins tackles good debt, like mortgages, with skepticism. He acknowledges that houses can be indulgences, but warns against buying more than you need. The real estate industry, he notes, pushes oversized homes, inflating costs and tying up money that could be invested. He and Jane bought modestly, only when it served their needs, keeping their freedom intact. Student loans, another good debt, get similar scrutiny. Collins contrasts his $1,200 a year college costs in the 1970s with his daughter's $40,000 a year expenses in the 2010s, blaming easy loans for inflating prices and warping education into job training. His advice: live cheaply, work to cover costs, and avoid loans that burden your future. The power of rule number 2 lies in its transformative potential. Collins shares a vision of a debt-free life where you're not a gilded slave to your income or possessions. He recounts meeting Mook in Tahiti, who built a hotel empire after a failed pineapple venture, and a sailing couple roaming the South Pacific. Their freedom came not from stuff, but from living unencumbered by debt, seizing opportunities with boldness. Collins' own journey, quitting jobs to travel, spending years unemployed, and retiring early, shows that a debt-free life unlocks possibilities. As he writes, "You weren't born to be a slave. Debt is the ultimate enemy because it steals your freedom, but defeating it is within your reach." Collins' plan, simple, disciplined, and relentless, turns a crisis into a catalyst. By cutting debt, you build the foundation for wealth, not just in money but in time, choice, and peace. The path is tough, but the reward is a life where you answer to no one but yourself. Rule No. 3. Spend less than you earn, the golden rule. This is the non-negotiable foundation. Wealth building is impossible without a gap between income and spending. Frugality isn't deprivation, it's conscious spending aligned with your values. Imagine a river flowing steadily, nourishing everything in its path. Now picture yourself scooping out more water than the river can replenish, watching it dwindle to a trickle. This is what happens when you spend more than you earn, a surefire way to dry up your financial future. Collins crowns spend less than you earn, as rule number 3, the golden rule that underpins all wealth building. It's deceptively simple, yet it's the key to creating a surplus that, when invested wisely, grows into the freedom to live life on your terms. Through personal stories and vivid examples, Collins shows how this rule transformed his life and can do the same for anyone willing to embrace it. Collins introduces this principle early in the book, weaving it into his core mantra: spend less than you earn, invest the surplus, avoid debt. In Chapter 3, he argues that financial independence hinges on creating a gap between income and expenses. That gap, your savings, is the fuel for building wealth. The wider the gap, the faster you reach freedom. He's blunt about the math. If you earn $50,000 a year and spend $60,000, you're digging a hole of debt. But if you spend $25,000, you're saving 50%, a surplus that, invested in low-cost index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX, compounds into life-changing wealth over time. Collins doesn't just preach this rule, he's lived it, and his stories make it real. Take his early career, when he earned a modest $10,000 a year at age 23. By living frugally, sharing apartments, cooking simple meals, and avoiding car payments, he saved $5,000 in 2 years. That surplus wasn't just money in the bank, it was power. At 25, craving adventure, he asked his boss for 4 months of unpaid leave to travel Europe. When the boss refused, Collins' savings gave him the courage to resign, knowing he could survive without a paycheck. His bold move paid off. The boss relented, granting a 6-week leave. Collins spent those weeks biking through Ireland and Wales, a taste of freedom made possible by spending less than he earned. That $5,000 surplus wasn't spent on stuff. It bought him options, what he calls FU money, the ability to say no to demands that didn't align with his dreams. Collins' life with his wife, Jane, further illustrates this rule. They consistently saved 50% of their income, even during lean times. When their daughter, Jessica, was born, Jane quit her job to stay home, despite both being temporarily unemployed. Most couples would have panicked, but their frugal habits, buying used cars, avoiding debt, and living modestly, created a surplus that cushioned them. Collins recalls those years as joyful, spent building teacup towers and Lincoln log cabins with Jessica while watching The Lion King on repeat. Their savings, invested in VTSAX, grew steadily, proving that spending less than you earn doesn't mean deprivation. It means prioritizing what matters. By keeping expenses low, they bought time with family, not a bigger house or fancier car. In Chapter 33, Collins outlines a 10-year plan for Jessica, showing how the golden rule applies to young people. He advises her to save 50% of her income, live frugally using college-honed skills like cheap meals and shared housing, and invest in VTSAX. If she earns $40,000 a year and spends $20,000, her $20,000 surplus, invested at a 7% real return, could grow to over $300,000 in a decade. By her 30s, she could achieve financial independence, when 4% of her assets covers her expenses, free to work, travel, or start a family without financial pressure. This plan isn't just for Jessica. It's a blueprint for anyone. Collins stresses that the higher your savings rate, the sooner you escape the need to work for money. The book's Stories from Tahiti in Chapter 34 highlight how this rule enables bold, unconventional lives. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a hotel in Tahiti. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, only to pivot to building a hotel with no experience. Their frugal mindset, living simply, reinvesting profits, created a surplus that fueled their success. By the time Collins met him, Mook was rich, barefoot, and living in paradise, not because he chased luxury, but because he spent less than he earned. Similarly, a couple sailing the South Pacific rotated business duties with partners in Los Angeles, spending months exploring. Their sailboat, bought with savings from a lean lifestyle, was a tool for freedom, not a status symbol. These examples show that the golden rule isn't about sacrifice. It's about creating the means to live authentically. Collins warns that ignoring this rule traps you in a cycle of consumerism. In Chapter 1, he critiques society's obsession with stuff: $32,000 cars, $100,000 college degrees, oversized homes, fueled by debt, and easy credit. Spending more than you earn keeps you tethered to a job, unable to take risks or pursue passions. He contrasts this with the monk in his parable from chapter 2, who lives on rice and beans, free from the need to serve the king. The minister, spending to maintain his lavish life, is enslaved by his expenses. Collins aligns with the monk. By keeping your needs low, you create a surplus that buys independence. His own mistakes reinforce this lesson. In his 30s, Collins lost $50,000 on a gold mining penny stock, chasing quick riches instead of sticking to his frugal, disciplined approach. That loss stung, but his high savings rate, spending far less than he earned, allowed him to recover without derailing his path to financial independence. He contrasts this with friends who lived paycheck to paycheck, spending every raise on bigger houses or fancier cars, only to face stress and stagnation. The golden rule, Collins learned, is a shield against such traps, ensuring you have the resources to weather setbacks and seize opportunities. In Chapter 37, Collins tackles good debt, like mortgages, urging readers to keep housing costs low to maintain a high savings rate. He and Jane bought modestly, avoiding the real estate industry's push for bigger homes that eat up income. By spending less on housing, they freed up money to invest, accelerating their path to freedom. He also critiques student loans, noting how his $1,200 a year college costs in the 1970s ballooned to $40,000 for Jessica in the 2010s, driven by easy credit. His advice: work, live cheaply, and minimize loans to preserve your surplus for investing, not debt repayment. The power of rule number 3 lies in its simplicity and universality. Whether you earn $30,000 or $300,000, spending less than you earn creates a surplus that, over time, compounds into wealth. Collins' life, quitting jobs to travel, retiring in 2011 to ride his motorbike or sip coffee on his porch, shows what's possible. Mook's Tahiti empire and the sailing couple's adventures prove that a high savings rate unlocks bold choices. The golden rule isn't about denying yourself joy. It's about choosing freedom over fleeting pleasures. By living below your means, you build a river of wealth that carries you to a life where time, not money, is your most precious asset. Rule No. 4. Invest the gap simply and relentlessly. Consistently invest your savings gap. Automate contributions to make saving and investing effortless and habitual. Time in the market beats timing the market. Imagine planting a seed in fertile soil, watering it faithfully, and watching it grow into a mighty tree that shelters you for life. That's the essence of wealth building, and rule number 4. Invest the gap simply and relentlessly stands as the engine of financial freedom. The gap is the surplus you create by spending less than you earn, and Collins insists that investing it in a simple, disciplined way is the surest path to independence. Forget chasing hot stocks or complex schemes. Collins' strategy is as straightforward as it is powerful. Put your money in low-cost index funds and let time and compounding do the rest. Through personal stories and vivid examples, he shows how relentless simplicity transforms modest savings into life-changing wealth. Collins introduces this rule in Part 2 of the book, particularly in Chapter 9, where he champions low-cost, broad market index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX. His mantra, spend less than you earn, invest the surplus, avoid debt, culminates in this step. Take the money you've saved and put it to work. The stock market, he argues, is the greatest wealth-building tool available, with an average annual return of 11.9% from 1975 to 2015. Despite its ups and downs, the market's long-term trend is upward, surviving wars, depressions, and crashes. Collins cites the Dow Jones Industrial Average, rising from 68 in 1900 to 11,497 by 2000, as proof of its resilience. The key is to invest simply, avoiding the traps of financial advisors and fancy products, and relentlessly, never wavering despite market volatility. His own journey illustrates this rule. In his early 20s, earning just $10,000 a year, Collins lived frugally and saved $5,000 in 2 years. That surplus wasn't stashed under a mattress. He invested it, initially in individual stocks, but later in index funds after learning hard lessons. By his 30s, he and his wife, Jane, were saving 50% of their income, funneling it into VTSAX. When their daughter, Jessica, was born, Jane quit her job, and they faced periods of unemployment. Their relentless investing, fueled by a high savings rate, kept their wealth growing. Collins recalls those years fondly, playing with Jessica, building Lincoln log cabins, knowing their investments were quietly compounding. By 2011, their disciplined approach allowed him to retire, free to ride his motorbike, travel to South America, or sip coffee on his porch. That freedom wasn't luck. It was the result of investing the gap simply and relentlessly. Collins' early mistake with a gold mining penny stock underscores the importance of simplicity. In his 30s, lured by the promise of quick riches, he poured $50,000 into a speculative venture, only to lose it all. The lesson was brutal. Complex investments are a sucker's game, designed to profit those who sell them, not you. He pivoted to index funds, inspired by Jack Bogle, Vanguard's founder, who created the first index fund in 1975. These funds track the entire market, offering low fees. Sachs's expense ratio is just 0.04% and outperforming most actively managed funds. Collins cites studies showing that 80 to 90% of professional money managers fail to beat the market over time. By investing simply in VTSAX, he avoided Wall Street's noise and let the market's growth work its magic. In Chapter 33, Collins outlines a 10-year plan for Jessica, showing how this rule applies to the young. He advises her to save 50% of her income, say $20,000 on a $40,000 salary, and invest it in VTSAX. At a 7% real return, that annual $20,000 could grow to over $300,000 in a decade, enough for financial independence if her expenses stay low. The 4% rule, based on the Trinity study, suggests she could withdraw 4% annually, $12,000 from $300,000, to cover living costs, adjusted for inflation, with a 96% chance of lasting 30 years. This plan hinges on relentless investing. Every dollar saved goes into VTSAX, month after month, ignoring market dips. Collins' advice isn't just for Jessica. It's a universal blueprint. Whether you're 22 or 52, investing the gap consistently builds the wealth to live on your terms. The book's Tahiti stories in Chapter 34 show how this rule enables extraordinary lives. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a Tahiti hotel. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, then pivoted to building a hotel despite no experience. Their frugal lifestyle created a surplus they invested in their venture, which grew into a thriving business. By the time Collins met him, Mook was rich, barefoot, and living in paradise, not chasing luxury, but building wealth through disciplined reinvestment. Similarly, a couple sailing the South Pacific invested their savings from a lean lifestyle into a sailboat and business partnerships, allowing months of exploration. Their wealth wasn't in possessions, but in the freedom to roam, made possible by investing their gap relentlessly. Collins addresses market volatility head-on, urging readers to stay the course. In Chapter 11, he recounts the 2008 financial crisis, when panic led many to sell at the bottom, locking in losses. His advice? Ignore the noise. Market drops are buying opportunities, letting you acquire more shares at lower prices. He emphasizes that no one can time the market, not even famous economists, and attempts to do so often lead to ruin. His own strategy during crashes was to keep investing, treating volatility as a feature, not a flaw. For retirees, he suggests a small bond allocation, e.g., 25% in Vanguard's Total Bond Market Index Fund, VBTLX, to smooth out swings, but the core remains VTSAX, bought relentlessly. In Chapter 18, Collins tackles retirement accounts, showing how to maximize the gap's growth. He advises maxing out 401(k)s, especially with employer matches, and funding Roth IRAs when income is low, as withdrawals are tax-free. By investing these accounts in VTSAX, you harness tax advantages to amplify your wealth. He shares his own approach, funding tax-advantaged accounts early, then taxable accounts, all in index funds. This relentless strategy, paired with a high savings rate, let him retire early, proving that simple, consistent investing outperforms complex schemes. Collins' disdain for financial advisors reinforces this simply part of rule number 4. In Chapter 14, he warns that advisors often push high-fee products to earn commissions, eroding your returns. He recounts friends who paid 1 to 2% annual fees, losing tens of thousands over decades compared to Sachs's 0.04% fee. His solution? Take control. Open a Vanguard account, buy VTSAX, and hold it. This simplicity empowers you to invest relentlessly without leaks from fees or bad advice. The power of rule number 4 lies in its elegance: a single fund, a single strategy, pursued with unwavering discipline. Collins' life, quitting jobs to travel, retiring to live freely, shows what's possible. Mook's Tahiti empire and the sailing couple's adventures prove that investing the gap unlocks bold choices. By keeping it simple and staying relentless, you harness the market's growth, turning modest savings into a tree of wealth that shelters you for life. Rule No. 5. The magic of VTSAX, or equivalent. A total stock market index fund, like Vanguard's VTSAX, is the ideal core investment. It provides instant diversification across thousands of companies, ultra-low fees, and captures the long-term upward trend of the market. Complexity rarely beats simplicity. Picture a vast, fertile field, teeming with every crop imaginable, growing steadily under the sun. Instead of betting on a single plant, you own a piece of the entire harvest, reaping its rewards year after year. This is the magic of VTSAX, Vanguard's total stock market index fund, as championed by J.L. Collins. Rule number 5 isn't just about picking an investment. It's about embracing a simple, powerful tool that captures the growth of the entire U.S. economy, delivering wealth and freedom with minimal effort. Through personal stories and compelling examples, Collins shows why VTSAX, or its equivalents, is the cornerstone of financial independence, a vehicle for turning savings into a life of choice. Collins introduces VTSAX in Part 2, particularly Chapter 9, as the heart of his investment strategy. He argues that the stock market is the greatest wealth-building tool available, averaging 11.9% annual returns from 1975 to 2015. Despite its volatility, the market's long-term trajectory is upward, as evidenced by the Dow Jones Industrial Average climbing from 68 in 1900 to 11,497 by 2000. VTSAX, with its tiny 0.04% expense ratio, tracks the entire U.S. stock market, thousands of companies, from giants like Apple to small startups, offering diversification, low costs, and performance that outpaces most actively managed funds. For those without access to Vanguard, Collins suggests equivalents like Fidelity's FSKX or Schwab's SWTSX, but VTSAX remains his gold standard. Its magic lies in simplicity: one fund, one decision, endless growth. Collins' own journey with VTSAX illustrates its power. In his 20s, earning a modest $10,000 a year, he saved $5,000 in 2 years through frugal living. Initially, he dabbled in individual stocks, but after a painful lesson, he shifted to index funds. By his 30s, he and his wife, Jane, were saving 50% of their income, funneling it into VTSAX. When their daughter, Jessica, was born, Jane quit her job, and they faced periods of unemployment. Yet their VTSAX investments grew steadily, fueled by relentless contributions. Collins recalls those years, playing with Jessica, building Lincoln log cabins, as joyful, knowing their wealth was compounding quietly. By 2011, Sachs's growth allowed him to retire, free to ride his motorbike, travel to South America, or sip coffee on his porch. That freedom wasn't from picking stocks, it was from trusting Sachs's magic. A defining moment came in his 30s, when Collins lost $50,000 on a gold mining penny stock, seduced by the allure of quick riches. The loss was a gut punch, teaching him that complex investments are a trap, profiting brokers more than investors. He discovered Jack Bogle, Vanguard's founder, who launched the first index fund in 1975, revolutionizing investing by offering low-cost access to the entire market. Studies Collins cites show 80 to 90% of professional managers fail to beat the market over time, Yet VTSAX captures its full growth. By switching to VTSAX, he avoided Wall Street's noise, letting the market's steady rise build his wealth. This simplicity, owning the whole market, not gambling on parts, became his mantra. In Chapter 33, Collins crafts a 10-year plan for Jessica, showcasing Sachs's potential for the young. He advises her to save 50% of her income, $20,000 on a $40,000 salary, and invest it in VTSAX. At a 7% real return, that annual $20,000 could grow to over $300,000 in a decade. The 4% rule, from the Trinity study, suggests she could withdraw 4% annually, $12,000 from $300,000, adjusted for inflation, with a 96% chance of lasting 30 years. By her 30s, Jessica could achieve financial independence, free to work, travel, or start a family, all thanks to Sachs's steady growth. This plan isn't just for her, it's for anyone. Collins emphasizes that Sachs's magic works at any age, turning consistent savings into exponential wealth. The Tahiti stories in Chapter 34 highlight how VTSAX-like investing enables extraordinary lives. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a Tahiti hotel. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, then pivoted to a hotel with no experience. Their frugal lifestyle created a surplus they invested in their venture, mirroring Sachs's principle of broad, steady growth. By the time Collins met him, Mook was rich, barefoot, and living in paradise, his wealth built on disciplined reinvestment, not speculation. Similarly, a couple sailing the South Pacific invested savings from a lean lifestyle into a sailboat and business partnerships, allowing months of exploration. Their investments, like VTSAX, were simple and long-term, funding a life of freedom, not luxury. Collins tackles market volatility in Chapter 11, reinforcing Sachs's reliability. During the 2008 financial crisis, many sold in panic, locking in losses. Collins kept investing in VTSAX, viewing crashes as sales on stocks. Market drops, he argues, are opportunities to buy more shares cheaply, boosting long-term returns. He stresses that no one can time the market, not even economists, and trying often leads to ruin. But Sachs's broad diversification cushions against single-stock failures, and its low fees preserve gains. For retirees, he suggests a 25% allocation to Vanguard's Total Bond Market Index Fund, VBTLX, to reduce volatility, but VTSAX remains the core, its magic undimmed by market swings. In Chapter 18, Collins explains how retirement accounts amplify Sachs's power. He advises maxing out 401(k)s, especially with employer matches, and funding Roth IRAs when income is low, as withdrawals are tax-free. By holding VTSAX in these accounts, you leverage tax advantages to grow wealth faster. Collins funded 401(k)s and Roth IRAs early, then taxable accounts, all in VTSAX, building a nest egg that freed him from work. This strategy, simple and relentless, proves Sachs's versatility across account types. Collins' disdain for financial advisors underscores Sachs's elegance. In Chapter 14, he warns that advisors push high-fee products, eroding returns. Friends who paid 1% to 2% fees lost tens of thousands over decades compared to Sachs's 0.04% cost. His solution? Open a Vanguard account, buy VTSAX, and hold it. This DIY approach empowers you to harness Sachs's magic without leaks. For non-Vanguard investors, he lists equivalents: Fidelity's FSKX, 0.015% fee, or Schwab's SWTSX, 0.03% fee, ensuring everyone can access this strategy. The magic of VTSAX lies in its simplicity, diversification, and low costs, turning savings into freedom. Collins' retirement, Mook's Tahiti empire, and the sailing couple's adventures show its transformative power. By investing in VTSAX or its equivalents, you own the whole market, riding its growth to a life where time, not money, is your greatest asset. Rule No. 6. Fees are the silent killer of wealth. Minimize investment fees at all costs. High fees, expense ratios, advisor fees, transaction costs compound over decades, devastatingly eroding your returns. Stick to low-cost index funds. Imagine a slow leak in a ship, so subtle you barely notice it. Yet over time, it sinks the vessel. Collins warns that investment fees are just such a leak, quietly draining your wealth while you sail toward financial independence. Rule number 6. Fees are the silent killer of wealth. Reveals how seemingly small percentages, like 1% or 2% charged by financial advisors or mutual funds, can cost you tens or hundreds of thousands over decades. Through personal stories and stark examples, Collins shows why minimizing fees, particularly by investing in low-cost index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX, is critical to preserving your wealth and achieving freedom. Collins hammers this point in Chapter 14, The Tyranny of Compounding Costs, comparing fees to termites gnawing at your financial foundation. A 1% annual fee, he explains, doesn't sound like much, but over 30 years, it can devour a third of your portfolio's potential growth. He illustrates with a hypothetical $100,000 investment growing at 7% annually. Without fees, it balloons to $761,225 in 30 years. With a 1% fee, it's only $574,349, a loss of nearly $187,000. A 2% fee slashes it further to $432,194, nearly half the no-fee return. These numbers aren't abstract. They're the difference between retiring early or working into your 70s. Collins' solution? Ditch high-fee products and advisors, choosing VTSEX with its 0.04% expense ratio to keep your wealth intact. His own journey underscores this rule. In his 30s, Collins learned the fee lesson the hard way, losing $50,000 on a gold mining penny stock peddled by a broker. The broker earned a commission, but Collins bore the loss, realizing that complex investments often hide steep costs. He pivoted to index funds, inspired by Jack Bogle, Vanguard's founder, who created VTSEX to track the U.S. stock market at a fraction of the cost of other funds. By investing his and his wife Jane's 50% savings rate, 50% of their income, into VTSEX, Collins minimized fees, letting the market's 11.9% average annual return, 1975 to 2015, 1975 to 2015, compound his wealth. When Jane quit her job after their daughter Jessica's birth, their low-fee VTSAX investments grew, despite periods of unemployment, enabling Collins to retire in 2011 to ride his motorbike, travel to South America, or sip coffee on his porch. Avoiding fees wasn't just smart, it was liberating. Collins contrasts his approach with friends who fell victim to fees. In Chapter 14, he recounts a couple who paid a financial advisor 1.5% annually to manage their portfolio. Over 25 years, their $500,000 investment grew to $1.2 million, but the advisor's fees siphoned off $400,000, enough for a beach house or a decade of retirement. Had they invested in VTSAX at 0.04%, they'd have kept nearly all that growth. Another friend stuck with a high-fee mutual fund charging 2%, touted as actively managed to beat the market. It didn't. Studies Collins cites show 80 to 90% of active managers fail to outperform the market over time, yet their fees persist, eroding returns. These stories hit home. Fees aren't just numbers, they're stolen dreams. In Chapter 33, Collins outlines a plan for Jessica, showing how low fees amplify wealth. He advises her to save 50% of her income, $20,000 on a $40,000 salary, and invest in VTSAX. At a 7% real return, that annual $20,000 could grow to over $300,000 in a decade. A 1% fee, however, would shave off $50,000, enough to fund years of travel or delay financial independence. By choosing Sachs's 0.04% fee, Jessica keeps nearly all her gains, potentially achieving freedom by her 30s to work, travel, or start a family. This advice applies universally, whether young or seasoned. Low fees are non-negotiable. For non-Vanguard investors, Collins suggests equivalents like Fidelity's FSKX, 0.015% fee, or Schwab's SWTSX, 0.03% fee, ensuring access to low-cost options. The Tahiti stories in Chapter 34 reflect this rule indirectly, showing lives built on efficient wealth building. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a Tahiti hotel. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, then pivoted to a hotel. Their frugal lifestyle created a surplus they reinvested, avoiding costly middlemen or speculative schemes. By keeping costs low, like Sachs's fees, their wealth grew, making Mook rich and free in paradise. A sailing couple, rotating business duties to explore the South Pacific, similarly invested savings efficiently, their lean approach mirroring Sachs's low-cost structure. Their sailboat wasn't a luxury. It was freedom, funded by minimizing wasteful costs. Collins tackles financial advisors in Chapter 14, warning their fee factories. Many charge 1 to 2% annually, plus commissions on high-cost products like annuities or actively managed funds. He recounts a colleague misled into a variable annuity with 3% fees, losing $100,000 over 20 years compared to VTSAX. Advisors, Collins argues, thrive on complexity, pushing products that obscure costs while underperforming the market. His solution? DIY investing. Open a Vanguard account, buy VTSAX, and hold it. This simplicity sidesteps fees, empowering you to keep your wealth. He acknowledges that some advisors are honest, but their value rarely justifies the cost when VTSAX delivers market returns at near zero expense. In Chapter 18, Collins shows how retirement accounts maximize Sachs's low-fee advantage. He advises maxing out 401(k)s, especially with employer matches, and funding Roth IRAs when income is low, as withdrawals are tax-free. Holding VTSAX in these accounts minimizes fees while leveraging tax benefits. Collins funded 401(k)s and Roth IRAs early, then taxable accounts, all in VTSAX, building a nest egg that freed him from work. High-fee 401(k) options, he warns, can erode gains, so choose the lowest-cost index fund available or lobby for better choices. This strategy proves Sachs's fee efficiency across account types. Collins addresses market volatility in Chapter 11, noting that low fees enhance resilience. During the 2008 crisis, many sold in panic, but Collins kept investing in VTSAX, its low costs preserving gains even in downturns. High-fee funds, he argues, compound losses, as fees persist regardless of performance. But Sachs's 0.04% fee ensures you keep more during recoveries, boosting long-term returns. For retirees, he suggests a 25% allocation to Vanguard's Total Bond Market Index Fund, VBTLX, 0.05% fee, to smooth volatility, but Sachs's low fees remain the core, safeguarding wealth through market cycles. The silent killer of fees thrives in obscurity, but Collins' rule number 6 shines a light. His retirement, Mook's Tahiti empire, and the sailing couple's adventures show what's possible when fees are minimized. By choosing VTSAX or its equivalents, you keep your wealth growing, not leaking, sailing toward a life where time, not money, is your greatest treasure. Rule No. 7. Ignore the noise and stay the course. Market crashes and volatility are inevitable. Don't panic. Turn off financial media, avoid stock picking, and resist the urge to sell during downturns. History shows the market recovers. Your greatest asset is your temperament. Imagine navigating a ship through a stormy sea, waves crashing and winds howling, while voices on the radio scream conflicting directions. Collins declares that building wealth is much the same. The market's ups and downs, the media's panic, and the chatter of self-proclaimed gurus create a cacophony that can derail your journey. Rule number 7. Ignore the noise and stay the course, is his call to keep your eyes on the horizon, investing steadily in low-cost index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX, no matter the tumult. Through personal stories and vivid examples, Collins shows how resilience and discipline triumph over fear, leading to a life of financial freedom. Collins introduces this rule in Chapter 11, Navigating the Market Storms, emphasizing that volatility is the market's nature, not its flaw. The stock market, with its 11.9% average annual return from 1975 to 2015, has always trended upward over the long term, surviving wars, recessions, and crashes. He cites the Dow Jones Industrial Average, soaring from 68 in 1900 to 11,497 by 2000, as proof of its resilience. Yet, short-term drops, 10%, 20%, even 50%, are normal, and the noise around them, from CNBC's dire predictions to your neighbor's hot stock tips, tempts you to abandon ship. Collins' advice is clear: tune it out. Keep investing in VTSAX, month after month, and let time and compounding work their magic. His own experience during the 2008 financial crisis brings this rule to life. As markets plummeted, headlines screamed of economic collapse, and many investors sold in panic, locking in devastating losses. Collins stayed the course, continuing to pour his savings into VTSAX. He saw crashes as sales, opportunities to buy more shares at lower prices. By 2011, when he retired, the market had largely recovered, and his portfolio had grown, not because he timed the market, but because he ignored the noise. His freedom to ride his motorbike, travel to South America, or sip coffee on his porch was built on this discipline. The 2008 crisis wasn't a disaster. It was a test, and staying the course was his triumph. Collins' early mistake with a gold mining penny stock reinforces the danger of noise. In his 30s, swayed by a broker's hype and market buzz, he invested $50,000 in a speculative venture, only to lose it all. The experience taught him that chasing trends or listening to experts leads to ruin. He pivoted to VTSAX, inspired by Jack Bogle's index fund Revolution, which captures the market's growth with minimal fees, 0.04%. Studies Collins cites show 80 to 90% of professional managers fail to beat the market over time, yet their predictions fuel the noise. By tuning out Wall Street's chatter and sticking to VTSAX, Collins built wealth steadily, proving that simplicity and persistence outperform panic and speculation. In Chapter 33, Collins outlines a 10-year plan for his daughter, Jessica, showing how this rule applies to the young. He advises her to save 50% of her income, $20,000 on a $40,000 salary, and invest it in VTSAX, ignoring market swings. At a 7% real return, that annual $20,000 could grow to over $300,000 in a decade, enough for financial independence if her expenses stay low. The 4% rule suggests she could withdraw $12,000 annually, adjusted for inflation, with a 96% chance of lasting 30 years. Market crashes, like 2008, will come, but Collins urges her to keep investing, as dips are temporary and recoveries inevitable. This plan, universal in its logic, shows that staying the course through noise builds freedom, whether you're 22 or 52. The Tahiti stories in Chapter 34 illustrate how ignoring noise enables bold lives. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a Tahiti hotel. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, undeterred by skeptics who called it folly. When it flopped, they pivoted to a hotel, ignoring naysayers and economic uncertainty. Their disciplined reinvestment, like Collins' VTSAX strategy, paid off, making Mook rich and free in paradise. Similarly, a couple sailing the South Pacific stuck to their plan, investing savings in a sailboat and business partnerships despite market fluctuations. Their focus on long-term goals, not short-term noise, funded months of exploration. These stories echo Collins' rule: tune out doubt and stay committed. Collins tackles the noise of market timing in Chapter 11, warning that no one, not economists, not gurus, can predict the market's moves. He recounts friends who sold during the 2008 crash, fearing further losses, only to miss the recovery. Others waited for the perfect moment to invest, paralyzed by headlines, and missed years of growth. Collins' strategy? Invest regularly in VTSAX, regardless of market conditions. Dollar-cost averaging, he argues, is unnecessary. Just keep buying. Crashes are opportunities, as lower prices mean more shares, boosting future returns. His own portfolio thrived because he ignored attempts to time the market, proving that consistency trumps cleverness. In Chapter 18, Collins shows how retirement accounts reinforce this rule. He advises maxing out 401(k)s, especially with employer matches, and funding Roth IRAs, holding VTSEX in both. During market dips, he kept contributing, knowing that low-cost index funds recover over time. High-fee 401(k) options, he warns, amplify noise by eroding gains, so choose the cheapest index fund available. His own 401(k) and Roth IRA, invested in VTSEX, grew through market cycles, freeing him from work. Staying the course in tax-advantaged accounts, despite volatility, maximizes long-term wealth. Collins' disdain for financial media amplifies rule number 7. In Chapter 14, he mocks CNBC's experts who fuel panic with dire forecasts or tout hot stocks, serving advertisers, not investors. He recounts a colleague who followed a TV guru's tip, buying a tech stock that tanked, losing $10,000. VTSEX, with its broad diversification, cushions against such failures. Collins' advice? Turn off the TV, avoid market newsletters, and stick to VTSEX. For retirees, he suggests a 25% allocation to Vanguard's Total Bond Market Index Fund, VBTLX, 0.05% fee, to ease volatility, but VTSEX remains the core, its steady growth silencing the noise. The power of rule number 7 lies in its call to resilience. Collins' retirement, Mook's Tahiti empire, and the sailing couple's adventures show what's possible when you ignore fear and stay committed. By tuning out noise and investing relentlessly in VTSEX, you navigate the market storms to a life where freedom, not money, is your greatest treasure. Rule No. 8. Understand your relationship with risk. Know your risk tolerance and stick to an asset allocation you can hold through thick and thin. For most, a simple portfolio heavily weighted in stocks, VTSEX. When young, potentially adding bonds, VBTLX, as you near retirement, suffices. Don't overcomplicate. Imagine standing at the edge of a diving board, peering down at the water below. Your heart races. Will you leap, trusting the plunge, or step back, overwhelmed by fear? Collins frames investing as a similar act of courage, where rule number 8, understand your relationship with risk, guides you to balance ambition with comfort. Risk, he argues, isn't just market volatility. It's deeply personal, tied to your goals, temperament, and life stage. By knowing your risk tolerance, you can craft a portfolio centered on low-cost index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSEX, that lets you sleep at night while building wealth. Through personal stories and vivid examples, Collins shows how mastering risk leads to financial freedom. Collins introduces this rule in Chapter 11, Reframing Risk as Volatility, a natural feature of the stock market's 11.9% average annual return from 1975 to 2015. Stocks, like VTSEX, offer high growth but swing wildly. Drops of 10%, 20%, or even 50% are normal. Cash, by contrast, feels safe but loses value to inflation, a stealthier risk. He cites the Dow Jones Industrial Average, rising from 68 in 1900 to 11,497 by 2000, to show that stocks reward those who endure volatility over decades. Yet, risk tolerance varies. Some embrace market dips as buying opportunities, while others lose sleep over paper losses. Collins urges you to know yourself. Your ability to stay calm during crashes determines your portfolio's mix and your path to independence. His own journey illustrates this rule. In his 20s, Collins saved $5,000 on a $10,000 salary, investing it initially in individual stocks. The volatility was thrilling but nerve-wracking, teaching him he could handle risk but craved simplicity. By his 30s, he and his wife, Jane, shifted their 50% savings rate to VTSEX, embracing its market-wide swings for long-term growth. During the 2008 financial crisis, when markets crashed, Collins stayed calm, buying more VTSEX shares at bargain prices. His risk tolerance, honed by experience, let him see volatility as a friend, not a foe. By 2011, his portfolio's recovery fueled his retirement, freeing him to ride his motorbike, travel to South America, or sip coffee on his porch. Understanding his risk appetite shaped his strategy and his freedom. A painful lesson in his 30s cemented this rule. Lured by a broker's pitch, Collins sank $50,000 into a gold mining penny stock, chasing high returns. The stock tanked, wiping out his investment. The risk wasn't just financial. It was emotional, shaking his confidence. This taught him to avoid speculative bets and align investments with his tolerance for loss. VTSAX, with its broad diversification across thousands of companies, minimized single-stock risk while capturing market growth. Collins learned he could stomach market dips, but not reckless gambles, a realization that guided his shift to index funds. This self-awareness, he argues, is crucial for everyone, ensuring you invest boldly but wisely. In Chapter 33, Collins tailors advice for his daughter, Jessica, showing how risk varies by life stage. He urges her to save 50% of her income, $20,000 on a $40,000 salary, and invest it in VTSAX, embracing its volatility while young. At a 7% real return, her annual $20,000 could grow to over $300,000 in a decade, enough for financial independence. Young investors, with decades ahead, can afford to ride out crashes as time smooths volatility. The 4% rule suggests she could withdraw $12,000 annually from $300,000, adjusted for inflation, with a 96% chance of lasting 30 years. For older investors nearing retirement, Collins suggests a 25% allocation to Vanguard's Total Bond Market Index Fund, VBTLX, to dampen swings, reflecting their lower risk tolerance. Jessica's youth allows a 100% VTSAX portfolio, but the principle, match risk to your stage and temperament, applies universally. The Tahiti stories in Chapter 34 show how risk tolerance shapes bold lives. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a Tahiti hotel. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, a high-risk venture mocked by skeptics. When it flopped, they pivoted to a hotel, undeterred by uncertainty. Their tolerance for risk, financial and emotional, fueled disciplined reinvestment, building a thriving business. By the time Collins met him, Mook was rich, barefoot, and free, his success tied to embracing calculated risks. Similarly, a couple sailing the South Pacific took risks, investing in a sailboat and business partnerships to fund exploration. Their comfort with uncertainty, like Collins with VTSAX volatility, enabled a life of adventure. These stories highlight that understanding risk lets you take leaps that align with your goals. Collins addresses the ultimate risk, market crashes, in Chapter 11, urging readers to reframe them. During 2008, many panicked, selling at the bottom, but Collins bought more VTSAX, knowing recoveries follow. He warns against the big ugly event, a catastrophic crash, but argues that diversification and a high savings rate mitigate such risks. But Sachs's thousands of holdings cushion against single company failures, and bonds, VBTLX, stabilize portfolios for retirees. His own calm during 2008 stemmed from understanding his risk tolerance. He could handle paper losses, trusting the market's long-term rise. This mindset, he insists, is key. Fear drives sales, but knowledge keeps you steady. In Chapter 18, Collins ties risk to retirement accounts. He advises maxing out 401(k)s, especially with matches, and funding Roth IRAs, holding VTSAX for growth. During market dips, he kept contributing, knowing volatility favors the young. For those nearing retirement, high-risk 100% stock portfolios may unsettle, so he suggests VBTLX to match lower risk tolerance. His own 401(k) and Roth IRA, invested in VTSAX, weathered cycles, freeing him from work. Understanding risk, he shows, guides account choices, ensuring you invest confidently. Collins debunks apocalyptic risks in Chapter 39, like economic collapse or asteroids, arguing they're unlikely. The real risk, he says, is letting fear stop you from investing. He recounts friends who hoarded cash during 2008, fearing market doom, only to miss the recovery. Cash's inflation risk, losing purchasing power, outweighs stock volatility for long-term investors. Sachs's historical growth, even through crises, proves that staying invested aligns with a high risk tolerance for growth. Collins' mantra, know yourself, ignore fear, empowers you to choose a path that fits. Rule number 8's power lies in self-awareness. Colin's retirement, Mook's Tahiti empire, and the sailing couple's adventures show that understanding risk unlocks possibilities. By aligning Sachs's volatility with your tolerance, you build wealth calmly, diving into a life where freedom, not fear, reigns. Rule No. 9. FU money is your greatest tool. Build enough wealth to have options. This financial cushion gives you the power to walk away from toxic jobs, unfair deals, or situations that compromise your integrity or well-being. It provides peace of mind. Picture yourself at a crossroads. One path leading to a life where you're free to chase your dreams, the other chaining you to a job or expectations you despise. Collins introduces rule number 9. FU money is your greatest tool, as the key to choosing the path of freedom. Borrowed from James Clavell's Noble House, FU money is the savings that give you the power to say no to anything that doesn't align with your values, whether it's a toxic boss, a draining lifestyle, or societal pressure. It's not about being rich, it's about having enough to walk away. Through personal stories and vivid examples, Collins shows how FU money transforms lives, turning financial security into unshakable independence. Collins introduces this concept in Chapter 1, describing FU money as money that buys you freedom. It's the ultimate leverage, granting you options to live on your terms. He argues that even a modest amount, far less than full financial independence, can shift the balance of power in your life. By saving aggressively, avoiding debt, and investing in low-cost index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX, you build this tool, which grows through compounding. FU money isn't for flaunting wealth. It's for saying, I don't need this job, this deal, or this stress, and walking away with your head high. His own story at age 25 brings this rule to life. Earning $10,000 a year, Collins saved $5,000 in 2 years through frugal living, shared apartments, simple meals, no car payments. Craving adventure, he asked his boss for 4 months of unpaid leave to travel Europe, an audacious request in the 1970s. The boss refused, but Collins' $5,000 in savings, his FU money, gave him the courage to resign. That nest egg meant he could survive without a paycheck, shifting the power dynamic. To his surprise, the boss relented, offering a 6-week leave. Collins spent those weeks biking through Ireland and Wales, the wind in his face and freedom in his heart. That small sum wasn't just money. It was the tool that let him negotiate his life's terms, proving even modest FU money can change everything. Collins' life with his wife, Jane, further illustrates this tool's power. Saving 50% of their income, they built a growing stash of FU money, invested in VTSAX. When their daughter, Jessica, was born, Jane quit her job to stay home, despite both being temporarily unemployed. Most would have panicked, but their savings, bolstered by a debt-free lifestyle, gave them the confidence to prioritize family. Collins recalls those years as blissful, playing with Jessica, building teacup towers, and watching The Lion King on repeat. Their FU money didn't buy a bigger house or fancier car. It bought time, the freedom to choose family over work. By 2011, their investments allowed Collins to retire, free to ride his motorbike, travel to South America, or sip coffee on his porch, a testament to FU money's long-term impact. In Chapter 33, Collins advises Jessica on building her own FU money, showing how this rule applies to the young. He urges her to save 50% of her income, $20,000 on a $40,000 salary, and invest it in VTSAX. At a 7% real return, that annual $20,000 could grow to over $300,000 in a decade, enough for financial independence or, at minimum, substantial FU money. Even $50,000, he notes, can let her walk away from a bad job or take a career risk. The 4% rule suggests $300,000 could yield $12,000 annually, adjusted for inflation, but FU money's real power is immediate. The ability to say no to anything that doesn't serve her. This advice is universal, whether you're starting out or mid-career. FU money gives you leverage. The Tahiti stories in Chapter 34 showcase FU money's transformative potential. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a Tahiti hotel. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, a risky venture. When it flopped, they pivoted to a hotel, using savings to fund it. That nest egg, their FU money, gave them the freedom to take risks without needing immediate profits. By the time Collins met him, Mook was rich, barefoot, and living in paradise, not because he chased status, but because he had the means to defy convention. Similarly, a couple sailing the South Pacific used their savings to buy a sailboat and structure business partnerships, allowing months of exploration. Their FU money wasn't about wealth. It was about the power to live boldly, untethered by financial necessity. Collins' early mistake with a $50,000 loss on a gold mining penny stock highlights why FU money matters. In his 30s, swayed by a broker's hype, he took a speculative risk, hoping for quick riches. The loss stung, but his savings, his early FU money, cushioned the blow, letting him recover without derailing his path. This taught him to avoid gambles and focus on steady investments like VTSEX, which grew his FU money reliably. He contrasts this with friends who lived paycheck to paycheck, lacking the savings to take risks or leave bad jobs. FU money, he learned, is a shield, giving you the courage to act without fear of ruin. In Chapter 11, Collins ties FU money to market volatility. During the 2008 financial crisis, many sold in panic, but Collins' savings let him buy more VTSEX shares at low prices. His FU money, liquid savings beyond investments, gave him the confidence to stay calm, knowing he could cover expenses without selling. This buffer, he argues, is part of understanding risk. Rule number 8, ensuring you don't panic during dips. For retirees, he suggests a 25% allocation to Vanguard's Total Bond Market Index Fund, VBTLX, to reduce volatility, but FU money in cash or bonds provides immediate security, reinforcing your ability to stay the course. In Chapter 18, Collins links FU money to retirement accounts. He advises maxing out 401(k), S, and Roth IRAs, holding VTSEX, but stresses keeping liquid savings outside these accounts. His own 401(k) and Roth IRA grew, but his FU money in taxable accounts gave him flexibility to quit jobs or take sabbaticals. This dual strategy, long-term investments and accessible savings, ensures you have the tool to act decisively. FU money, he shows, isn't just for emergencies, it's for seizing opportunities. The magic of rule number 9 lies in its empowerment. Collins' retirement, Mook's Tahiti empire, and the sailing couple's adventures prove that FU money unlocks a life of choice. By saving aggressively and investing in VTSEX, you build the greatest tool, a war chest that lets you say no to what traps you and yes to what sets you free. Rule No. 10. Financial independence is achievable for everyone. It's not about high income. It's about high savings rate and smart investing. By living below your means, avoiding debt, and investing consistently in low-cost index funds, financial independence, FI, is a realistic goal for ordinary people, not just the wealthy. Imagine waking up each morning knowing you don't have to work, free to spend your day as you choose, whether traveling the world, building teacup towers with your kids, or simply sipping coffee on your porch. Collins declares this dream, financial independence, achievable for everyone, no matter your income or starting point. Rule number 10 is his rallying cry. By living frugally, avoiding debt, saving aggressively, and investing in low-cost index funds like Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSEX, anyone can build enough wealth to live on their terms. Through personal stories and inspiring examples, Collins shows that financial independence isn't reserved for the wealthy. It's a path open to all who commit to it. Collins defines financial independence in Chapter 19 as the point where your investments generate enough income to cover your expenses indefinitely. The 4% rule, based on the Trinity study, suggests you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually, adjusted for inflation, with a 96% chance of lasting 30 years. For $20,000 in annual expenses, you need $500,000, $20,000 divided by 0.04. This isn't a fortune. It's achievable through consistent saving and investing in VTSEX, which averaged 11.9% annual returns from 1975 to 2015. Collins' mantra: spend less than you earn, invest the surplus, avoid debt, democratizes wealth building. You don't need a high salary or genius IQ. You need discipline, patience, and a plan. His own journey proves this rule. Starting with a $10,000 salary in his 20s, Collins saved $5,000 in 2 years through frugal living, shared apartments, cheap meals, no car payments. He invested this surplus, initially in stocks, then in VTSAX after a costly lesson. By his 30s, he and his wife, Jane, saved 50% of their income, funneling it into VTSAX. When their daughter, Jessica, was born, Jane quit her job, despite periods of unemployment. Their debt-free lifestyle and investments cushioned them, allowing joyful years playing with Jessica. By 2011, their VTSAX portfolio, grown through relentless saving and compounding, funded Collins' retirement at 56. He now rides his motorbike, travels to South America, or sips coffee, free from work. His modest start shows that financial independence is achievable, even without a windfall. A painful mistake in his 30s reinforces this accessibility. Collins lost $50,000 on a gold mining penny stock, chasing quick riches. The loss hurt, but his high savings rate, 50% of income, let him recover without derailing his path. He contrasts this with friends who spent every dollar, trapped by debt and jobs they hated. Financial independence, he learned, doesn't require complex schemes. It demands simplicity, VTSAX, low fees, 0.04%, and time. Anyone can follow this path, as Collins did, by avoiding speculation and sticking to disciplined investing. In Chapter 33, Collins outlines a 10-year plan for Jessica, proving financial independence is within reach for the young. He advises her to save 50% of her income, $20,000 on a $40,000 salary, and invest it in VTSAX. At a 7% real return, this could grow to over $300,000 in a decade. With $15,000 annual expenses, she'd need $375,000 for independence, $15,000 divided by 0.04, achievable in 12 to 15 years. By her 30s, Jessica could work, travel, or start a family, free from financial pressure. This plan isn't just for her, it's for anyone. A $30,000 earner saving 50%, $15,000, could hit $500,000 in 15 to 20 years, assuming low expenses. Collins' math shows that time and savings rate, not income, drive independence. The Tahiti stories in Chapter 34 illustrate how financial independence enables extraordinary lives. Collins meets Mook, an American who co-owned a Tahiti hotel. In the 1960s, Mook and his friends bought a failing pineapple plantation, then pivoted to a hotel with no experience. Their frugal lifestyle created a surplus they reinvested, building a business that freed Mook to live richly in paradise. Similarly, a couple sailing the South Pacific invested savings from lean living into a sailboat and partnerships, funding months of exploration. Their independence came not from high salaries, but from disciplined saving and investing, echoing Collins' VTSAX strategy. These stories prove that financial independence is achievable for anyone willing to prioritize freedom over consumption. In Chapter 11, Collins addresses volatility, a hurdle for all investors. During the 2008 financial crisis, many panicked, selling at the bottom, but Collins bought more VTSAX, seeing dips as sales. His savings rate and debt-free life gave him confidence to stay the course, knowing recoveries follow. The Dow's rise from 68 in 1900 to 11,497 by 2000 shows the market's resilience. Anyone can weather volatility, Collins argues, by keeping expenses low and savings high, making independence attainable even in tough times. In Chapter 18, Collins ties independence to retirement accounts. He advises maxing out 401(k)s, especially with matches, and funding Roth IRAs, holding VTSAX. His own 401(k) and Roth IRA, invested in VTSAX, grew steadily, but his taxable accounts provided flexibility. This dual strategy, tax-advantaged and liquid savings, makes independence accessible, letting anyone build wealth efficiently. Even modest contributions, like $5,000 annually to a 401(k), compound significantly over decades, proving no one is too small to start. Collins debunks barriers in Chapter 39, arguing that fears like economic collapse or low income are surmountable. He cites friends who never invested, fearing market doom, yet missed Sachs's growth. Even low earners, he notes, can achieve independence by living frugally, like the monk in Chapter 2, free on rice and beans. Collins' own modest $10,000 start, compared to his daughter's $40,000 college costs, shows that mindset, not money, unlocks the path. Everyone, he insists, can save, invest, and win. Rule number 10's power lies in its inclusivity. Collins' retirement, Mook's Tahiti empire, and the sailing couple's adventures show that financial independence is for anyone who commits. By saving, investing in VTSAX, and living simply, you build a life where freedom, not work, defines your days.